Welcome to LegacyCast, your source for hearing from top influencers, industry experts, and successful business owners who are telling their unique story about life, values, goals, business strategies, and the various causes they are so passionate about. Future generations will come to be impacted by what is happening today, whether positive or negative, and our mission is to focus on what is going to affect change for the better. Hosted each weekday by James Snow, a former U.S. Army combat medic, now founder and principal advisor of James Advisors Group, a full-service financial planning firm in North Texas. This is LegacyCast. Welcome, LegacyCast listeners. This is your host, James Snow, coming to you from the LegacyCast bunker here in North Texas. And we have today a guest that's from the East Coast here, Matt Houston. And Matt is coming to us from the Carolinas. And, here, everybody's aware of the weather that we've been having here recently. And so, we're certainly grateful that Matt is handling it pretty well. He hasn't sunk yet, so we're pretty good there. He's still staying afloat. And Matt has a program that we're going to be talking about with the 100 Connections project that he's involved with. But without further ado, let's bring Matt into the program. Welcome to the podcast, bud.
Thanks, James.
So Matt, obviously, when you hear the term legacy, that probably puts a lot of things in your mind, and that's sort of what we enjoy talking about here is kind of the different flavors of legacy. It doesn't have to be necessarily a financial one, but it's what people are doing in their world, in their community, and either through education or what have you, that's going to leave a mark for the next generation to follow on. And so when you hear legacy, what are you thinking about?
Well, for me, legacy has always been kind of that thing that you leave, the thing you leave behind, the way that you change the world, that impact that you're going to have, whether that's going to be business or you're going to create something or it's going to be your family, like that's sort of the legacy. Yep. You think about that in terms of finances, in terms of money left behind for the family. In terms of my project, that really comes down to, we talk about the world right now being the most connected that we've ever been with social media, but also the loneliest that we've ever been. So kind of the legacy that I'm trying to leave behind with this project is to break down some of those social media barriers and walls and teach people how to connect a little more authentically again.
So when you're talking about your project, if you can go maybe dive a little bit deeper into that and tell us sort of what's going on with that.
Okay. So I, up until recently worked in financial services up till this past July. And I remember had a young man say, I go to all these networking events around town and I tell them where I work and they all know who you are. They all know you. They all have a big smile about you. How do you know everybody? And I went, I really don't know. How is everybody your friend? I don't know. So a couple of things happened and I decided that it was time to move on. And the first thing that occurred to me was, how do we build these relationships? Because I do know a lot of people in Charleston. I have built a remarkable community down here. I just didn't know how. I couldn't really tell you. I couldn't pinpoint on the steps. So I decided to take this time and live off of a pension that I have from the military and live off of my savings and say, you know what? Let's go out and just meet 100 people where I really don't have any agenda. I don't have any job that I'm looking for. I don't have any product or business or service I'm trying to sell. It's just me talking to 100 people. They can be anybody. And we'll meet one a day. And wherever they want, however long they want to talk. And then we'll write about it every day. And we'll just see, kind of chronicle this journey of how we meet people and how we form these connections and what we can find out about that.
That's interesting. And so you're basically just kind of, doing in effect, sort of, I guess, on some instance, sort of what we're doing here with this program is, just finding out, what people are doing.
Yeah.
Just going around and talking to people and finding out, what do they have going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very, very much trying to take that time to to really get into know other people and to let them have the freedom to put their agenda down. You know, I did this a lot when I was in business. There was a lot of sitting down and talking, and I had something to get across the table and they had something to get across the table. And so you're both kind of pressed for time. But what I found is when I was able to put that agenda down and they were able to put theirs down, we were able to make some really interesting connections and learn some really neat things about each other in the time, find some commonality that we had that we might not know we had before.
Okay, and so what is in your vision here? What do you think the end result of all that's going to become?
Well, immediately after this will probably, I think the big one will be, I discovered a lot of changes in myself as a person, a lot of changes and shifts in who I am as a person, how I act, the happiness level and everything else. So that'll probably turn into a book that talks a little bit less about everybody else and a little bit more about what in the world happened to me. Because you think about one person a day, it doesn't seem like a huge amount of people. But the impact you can have when you decide to just be really open and talk to one person a day for 100-day period is quite a bit.
Yeah, it's certainly a unique concept from what you're going after there. So do you feel like it's important that everyone consider kind of what they are themselves doing to impact their legacy?
Yeah, I think
what you're doing.
Well, I think when you get right down to it, you know, I was always struck by this one quote I read when I was in the military by Gandhi when he said, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. I was always really taken by that. I think it's easy for us to sit back and say things, right? It's easy to look back and go, well, I wish this was different. I wish that was different. But if you have those thoughts of changing the world, and if you have those thoughts, even of just, I want my family to do this, or I want this thing to happen, then I think it's really important for you to set your sights on that and dedicate some time and really drive forward to a legacy. Because ultimately that's really what you're leaving behind. It's not going to be the toys or anything else. It's what you've done to kind of impact your community. I think it's hugely important.
Right. So how does your view on legacy actually affect what you're doing in a business standpoint?
Well, it really is driven kind of the planning. So this could have just been a neat little thing for me and kind of write it down in a journal and move on. But the idea of leaving the legacy, especially from a business perspective, when we started this, I had a whole bunch of people say, hey, I want to try to do the same thing that you're doing. I said, okay, great. And unfortunately, they had a really hard time replicating the project. We couldn't figure out why. So it kind of led me into this sort of coaching and relationship role now, helping people kind of figure out how to execute this, because everyone's going to do this a little differently, and that's great. But there are some stumbling blocks that can really make trying to pull something like this off exceptionally difficult. So we've really spent a lot of time trying to build that out and trying to find a way that hopefully I'm not the only person that does. And I know other people have done things similar, but hopefully this idea we can get to spread out and have more people do this across the way. Something we're pursuing right now is here locally within Charleston. We've talked to a couple of local business owners about doing connections tables. So, you know, we always have that one person in a restaurant or in a coffee shop who's sitting by themselves. So we're talking about sponsoring tables within these areas where they'll sit down and you sit and you agree that someone else might sit there and you're going to have a conversation with them. And then you write about that and send us the picture of that. And we kind of put that out there, this idea that we can still make random connections between two human beings and not just be connected on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Mm-hmm. So from a CEO standpoint, kind of looking at it through that lens, what would be maybe a couple things that maybe still keep you up at night about how your business operations are going?
It's the growing and the scaling and the next steps. This was easy when it was just me. Now I have a few other people helping me out as a marketing team to kind of build this out and grow. We're talking about doing some speaking endeavors and things like that. So that whole process of going from one fun little, okay, I'm going to meet one person today and write about it, to now we're looking at thousands of readers a week. And I'm going to end up going around and doing all these logistics things, seeing people, and how do we get that out? How do we handle the press? It's the real immediate scaling of an idea that really keeps me up.
So what different platforms are you putting this out on? Is it just like a written blog that you're doing it, or video, audio? How are you doing that?
Right now, we're just doing a written blog. We're hoping to launch some video here in the next 2 weeks that's a little bit different. We went with writing because I find that having conversations with people works a little bit better when I just have the written word. More people are open to it. Some people get turned off by the idea of being recorded.
Okay.
So we did it that way. But right now we're doing it. We have a website up, and we have posts through my LinkedIn, and then we have Facebook social media accounts on Instagram, Twitter, these various places where we're firing the links off.
Cool. So do you believe that it's important that people set up some sort of a strategy, or maybe a plan, as it were, for themselves, either both on personal side as well as the business side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I notoriously say that I'm paralyzed by perfectionism. If I don't actually plan and start moving forward, I will delay forever. With this project, I gave myself a week and a half to launch because if I did anything longer, I would have gone, oh, the website's not perfect. Oh, this isn't perfect. So I gave myself a week and a half and publicly announced I'm going to be doing this starting this day. So I had no excuses, but I also then sat down and started drawing out the plan. What did day 1 through 10 look like? What did 20 through 30 look like? Because those action steps help you break it down, help you make it a little bit more concrete, and understand that more stuff's going to grow. As your legacy grows, there's going to be more things added to it, and having plans is what's going to help you build that up.
That's true. And then also you can reverse engineer. When you had that plan put together, you can reverse engineer and figure out, okay, this is what steps I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it before you get to it. And so you're able to kind of take care of some of those speed bumps before you get to them, which is a nice thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that was part of how that week and a half went. It was, all right, I'm going to do a thing. So I'm going to make a big announcement in Charleston that I'm going to start on this day. And then I went, great, I have a week and a half. So it was walking back. What do I have to get done in 9 days? Like, what do I have to get done? Where am I? What's going on? And that actually helped a lot more than thinking about it, because it would have seemed like an overwhelming mountain of work otherwise.
Sure.
But then it's just, hey, there's a bunch of work and we have 9 days to do it. So how much do we have to do now to be moving the needle?
Yeah, you're able to take it into bite-sized chunks when you have a plan of attack, which certainly gives you a much better approach than just going willy-nilly, as it were.
Absolutely.
Do you let's see. What are some of the reasons that you feel like maybe entrepreneurs are failing or giving up? You see a lot of that.
Oh man, I think a couple of things that have been interesting, and actually, since a couple of startup entrepreneurs have been part of this project, I've gotten a little of fun insight on that as well. Some of it, one reason I think, is they get in love with the image and forget that that's a down the road thing, right? Like, you and I are both in the military, so I remember when I was an NCO and a senior NCO, my younger troops would be like, "Oh man, I want to have an office," and it took 10 years to sit in an office. It didn't happen the first day I came in. So I think that's part of it. Like, starting a business and being an entrepreneur is tough. Those first years are crucial, and they're long hours and they're lots of work. I think also inflexibility. I think not being able to roll with the punches and understand what you have and see how it changes, right? I'm always a big fan of the idea that, honestly, you can want to do whatever you want, but the market's going to tell you whether it was successful or not. So when I said I was going to do this, I didn't really pass it around to a whole bunch of my friends. I just said, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And either the market's going to like it and I'm going to build an audience, or they're going to hate it. And I'm not going to build an audience and it's going to be over. But that way, instead of my friends going, well, it could be good, but maybe this, I think a lot of people get that paralysis of perfectionism. They want it to be perfect. They want that endeavor to be wonderful. And it's just not going to be perfect. It's got to be good enough, and the consumer, or whoever your consumer, your audience are, have to be happy with it. And if that's going on, then you're being successful. Whether that immediately leads to a lot of roll-in of money, or whether you're still losing some money on I've talked to startup entrepreneurs with 15 or 16 software engineers, and all of those guys have to get paid. So the CEO is making less money than you'd think he'd be making, but he has to pay those engineers. So it's just, I think that's really what gets to it. It's that believing that the end result is going to happen faster than it is, being inflexible to pivot, and then getting paralyzed by that image of perfectionism. That idea that I want this is my baby. My baby's going to be perfect the minute that I bring it out of the room.
Sure. So what maybe would be some roadblocks that you would warn people to be keeping their eyes out for that you've discovered, in your experience? Roadblocks, and then also after that, kind of on the flip side of it is some resources that you tell people to look for.
Well, one of the first ones is somebody's always going to doubt your dream or kind of down on it. That's going to happen regardless, whether you're baking cookies or you're writing. As a guy in a project now that's very much me being a writer, I always hear the quote of Ecclesiastes, "There's nothing new under the sun." And I never hear it from someone trying to encourage me. I hear it from someone going, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea, but there's nothing new under the sun." So I always tell people, I go, "How do you get past it?" I go, "Well, I just look at them and they go, yeah, except the way that I'm going to tell it. There's never been me, and this is my way of telling that same story." So I think you're going to encounter that. Some people are just not going to get it, or they're going to kind of passively down on your dream. That's going to happen. It happened to me. It happens to every entrepreneur I know. You're going to have to make a pivot. I've had to make pivots with this project. I don't think any business starts and progresses on a perfect straight line. You're going to have to make a pivot, and some things are going to shift and change. When I started this, I thought Facebook would be my primary source for readership, and it actually turned out to be LinkedIn by a lot. Like LinkedIn represents 90% of my website traffic comes via LinkedIn. I would have thought I would have been more popular on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Nope, it's all LinkedIn traffic. The numbers are staggering.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was just, I went, okay, well, clearly I have to spend a little more time hyping myself up on LinkedIn because that's where everybody's looking. So you're going to have to make those pivots. I think that's just a roadblock people need to get through. And then every once in a while, you're going to encounter a situation you just can't work with, and you need to know when to walk away. As I've been doing this, like I said, we've had other people who wanted to try this up in other places. And sometimes when I talk to them and I'm trying to work with them, they just don't get it. They don't get the vision. They don't understand this idea of really studying how authentic human relationships are made. And we can't do anything about it. Doesn't make them bad people. They just don't get it. So you have to learn to walk away from that. As far as resources, I'm a humongous fan. My daily motivational is almost always Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm a huge fan of Gary V. I like his no-nonsense style and the way he really cuts to the chase and just says, look, just do what you're doing. Also, though, I think building that support network is really important. Having those friends and those people that you can call up. I have several on the day when I have like rough days that I just call up and go, man, you got a minute to talk? And we'll chit-chat for a few minutes and just go back and forth on it. Because you just have to have that support system. Those people, and hopefully they're people that realize they don't have to understand what you're trying to do or completely get it. They just want to support you. What is it?
Sure.
Keith Ferrazzi calls those lifeline relationships, right? You got to build those lifeline relationships. Right. And then third is especially if you're talking about entrepreneurs or whatnot, find an incubator. Find an accelerator or some program that builds the community of entrepreneurs. I'm really involved in 1 Million Cups in Charleston. That's been my big network that I've used, my community. So when I was getting started and said, man, I got to meet 100 people, and I'd really not want to go out every single day and randomly introduce somebody. I wonder if I could schedule a few meetings out. So I stood up at a 1 Million Cups meeting and said, hey, I'm doing this thing and I need to meet some people. So if you've got someone I could meet, let me know. And they came up with that advice and all of those things, people I didn't know. So I think being part of those communities, those accelerators, those groups, and they're with the internet and everything else, they're so easy to find. And they provide you, again, just another support mechanism.
Absolutely. Good words. So what would be something maybe that you had done, wish you had done earlier in your life that you didn't do? Is there anything that really glares at you?
Right after I got out of the military, I kind of wish I'd started this. So I got out of the military 2 years ago. And I always say 2 weeks after I got out of the military, my wife decided to get out of our marriage. So I was scrambling. I was looking for a job. I was getting ready to go through a divorce, and I was just trying to find the next thing. And I didn't take the time to figure out what I really wanted to do. I just went, where am I getting paid? Where am I getting paid? What's going on? And so I took those jobs, and I don't regret the things I learned in them. But in the end, it was a lot of stress, and I was unhappy. And fortunately, after a couple of years, I was able to go, hey, I'm unhappy. There's something else I want to do. I'm going to go do that. I just wish, looking back on it, if I could say one thing, I wish that I had maybe started this path a little sooner rather than ride 2 years of kind of being afraid and clinging on and going, oh, no, things got unstable and I got scared, which is normal. That's going to happen. But I wish I'd been a little bit more courageous on this decision back a couple years back. But being here now, I guess, is better late than never.
Well, that's true. That's true. So as far as like personal values, we're in a very unique time, here in our society. How would you say that your personal values and your beliefs play a role in what you're doing business wise, and how would you advise other people to incorporate their belief systems into their business?
So I come from that military logic of core values, right? Like when we were all in the service, we all had core values. So the Air Force was always integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And I held those really tightly through my military career. And even after, those became core values for me just in life. I got a few added on to that personally, but those are the core of what I do. Those are the core of my business. Those are the core of this project. I don't make a single decision on this project that doesn't line up with my values, to the point where I had someone contact me, goes, hey, I'd love to be on the show, and I could get you a whole bunch of publicity, and I could help put this out, and you could see people, and you could do this and write about me, and all my network of 50, 60,000 people will see, here's what you need to tell about my business. And I went, well, I'm not a marketing group. I'm not advertising your business. I'm just meeting and talking to people. And they went, well, that's not going to work. And we hit that point, and I said, well, integrity with this is integrity is probably my single most important value. And when I looked at what they wanted, I couldn't make them happy and maintain the integrity of myself and the integrity of the project. I couldn't. I would literally just be doing it to try to increase readership, and I would be ignoring everything I kind of set out to start with on this project, this whole non-agenda conversation. So I had to walk away from it. In the end, though, I mean, that was very early on, and that was kind of tough. That was about the second week of this when I had maybe 100 people looking at it. And I went, oh, man, I really feel like I kicked myself in the face there. I could have had all of these extra people. But the counter to that is by having that integrity and by driving it as such a values-driven conversation, that's what captured the imagination of my audience. And from my audience is actually where my team started getting built up from. So I don't have anybody on my team who didn't start out as a member of my audience and then came to me later because of that kind of that those values will come through. So when people are starting to start businesses, I think it starts with the values. We have these great conversations about culture, right? How do we build company culture? Well, culture builds over time, but it builds from leadership, and leaders' primary job is to set the values for their organization. So if you're building a business, your personal values and what you want for that business have to be there. If you want people to be honest, then you have to be honest, even when it's painful. My godfather was a huge influence raising me, and he always used to tell me the right thing to do is always the right thing. And it's not always the easy thing. It's not always the fun thing, but it is, oddly enough, always the right thing. So I think, make those values the core of your business. Make it the core of what you're doing, and make your decisions off of that. It seems harder, but it actually makes life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that's true. And so often, I will encourage people, to just remember that, you only should be doing business with people that agree with what your value system is. And if you're doing business with somebody that has a different point of view, then at some point it's going to fall apart, and there's going to be a breakdown, and you're going to end up losing a lot more in the long term. Not just time, but sometimes even money. You're going to lose a lot more money in that process, because you should have just shaking hands and part as friends, but you proceeded forwards. And so that's why I tell people, just stick to your guns and stick to what your value system is. If you're not compatible, that's okay. It's okay to just move past.
Yeah, there's plenty. I come from kind of this abundance mentality. There's more than enough business in this world for everybody. What you're doing. There are more than enough people to make my audience and everybody else's audience at the same time. So
absolutely.
If people don't like, someone had critiqued me and said they wanted to see me be more divisive, because a lot of my conversations come from a friendlier spot. Even if we disagree, I try to find common ground with people, because I think right now in this day and age, we have a whole lot of talk about how we argue and disagree. And I wanted to have more conversations about, hey, what do we agree on? I mean, I can find something to disagree on in 5 minutes, but can we build something to agree on? So, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. They want that, and they weren't happy with what I was doing. But, well, okay, someone else is arguing. I promise you, there's someone on the news or on the internet somewhere arguing. It won't take long to find them. I'm not going to change what I'm doing and what I believe in because of that. There's just plenty out there. There's too much out there for you to start compromising to try to get every little thing. And I think if you look at the world as an abundant state, then you're great with that. If you look at it as a scarcity state, that's when you start compromising on those values to try to get everything that you can.
That's true. It's a good point. Very good point. So when starting this process, and since you're also a veteran, then you had that transition stage. What hurdles have you gone through during that transition period to get you up to where you are now?
I think one of the biggest ones, I was just talking about it with someone this morning. One of the biggest ones was, we have that whole mentality in the military of just embrace the suck, right? Like it's just going to be unpleasant and you just have to get through it. My commander used to say to us, bloom where you're planted. Because you're in the military, you don't have a choice of where you go. And I really held on to that. So I was in some places, like I said, I wish 2 years ago I'd done this, but I was in places going, well, I don't love what I'm doing right now, but no, that's fine. It's just unpleasant. We just do it. You go, well, but you don't have to. You can find something you want to do instead of just doing this. That was something you had to do in the military, because the military, we thrive. We're mission operative. Like we have a very intense, very stressful job. We have to embrace those things, but outside you don't have to. I'm amazed at the number of people that I've encountered in the time I got out who are literally miserable right now, and probably making at least one other person miserable at the same time, because they think they have no choice. And the reality is you do have options. That was a big one for me, was getting out of that logic of that. And there was a hierarchy thing. I was an enlisted guy, so I would go out and meet people in my jobs. When I worked in financial services and all, I'd go out and meet people and go, oh, I can't talk to so-and-so. They're higher ranking. So one of the people we approached with this project on that was a little bit of a jump for me was a woman named Nancy Mace. And Nancy was really big in the late 90s. She was the first woman to graduate the Citadel here in South Carolina. So I'd wanted to meet Nancy Mace for a while. And she is also a state rep in the state assembly of South Carolina. And I had to overcome that military formality where I went, oh, I can't approach her. I can't talk to her. I'm just me. She outranks me, because the staff sergeant doesn't go up to the 4-star general and go, hey, sir, how you doing? You know your place. And the outside world doesn't work that way. So fortunately enough, I had a really great mentor when I got out of here, a guy by the name of Mike. And Mike kind of showed me that, look, the reality is people put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. They're just people. So let that hierarchy worry go and just talk to them and approach them as people. And it really was a shift in perspective. So I think those were the two, like getting out of that trying to pigeonhole myself into one level based on rank or status or whatnot. And then that real challenge of, embracing the negative and saying, well, this is what I have to do, so I'll just stay here. The negative just has to happen. Sometimes it does, sure, but not nearly as much as we pretend it needs to happen.
So did you sort of stumble upon that, or was it obvious, that answer?
No, I very much stumbled upon that. Okay. I could not have told you about embracing the negative until this project started. I didn't realize it. I was sitting here. It was 4th of July, I was off of work because no one was going to meet with me in my business on 4th of July. It was a day off. And it was oddly enough in the middle of the week. And I was absolutely miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And now that I had time to sit and think about it, I went, wow, I am completely miserable. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, well, just do something else. And I went, well, but I can't. He goes, why can't you do something? Like, what? Why can you not go and do something else? Why can you not go do a different business, do a different job? Why can't you move on? I don't know. And that's when it occurred to me, I was stuck in this mindset. But up until then, I was so deep in it, I didn't know I was in it. I had to kind of see it from the outside and go, man, I'm miserable. But I'm trying to make the best of a bad situation. Well, stop. Sometimes a bad situation, the best of it is to get out of it.
So if you can talk me through the process of how you got started, doing what you're doing now.
Okay. So like I said, the idea kind of really organically came up right after I quit my previous job. And I said, all right, well, this will at least be, it originally kind of came out of this idea that no one wants a gap on their resume, right? And I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do coming out of that job, moving into another one. So I went, well, at least this is a project I can do. I can do a little project, and this will be a resume placeholder, if nothing else. I've done something. I haven't just sat around. And while I'm doing that, I can figure out what I want to do. And maybe I'll meet someone that can help me figure that out along the way. So I kind of walked in and came up with the idea. And then that Wednesday, so 1 Million Cups meets every Wednesday. So knowing that paralysis by perfectionism, I stood up very publicly at the end of 1 Million Cups and said, hey, I'm going to try to meet 100 people in 100 days. I'm going to write about it every day that I do it. I'm starting on Monday, July 23rd. And everyone went, oh, wow, that's really great. And someone came up to me and said, man, how much work have you done on this? I went, not a bit. Like I announced it. So I immediately had to learn how to get a website up and running and go snag social media pages and build a logo and, just all of this stuff. Luckily enough, I'd encountered a lot of it working. So I'd encountered, I use Calendly to schedule. And I'd encountered Calendly software from other people that I did business with. And I went, oh, okay, Calendly would probably be pretty good. So that was low-hanging fruit. But then building a website was, how much effort do I want to put into that? Do I really want to dig deep into building a website? Do I want to hire somebody, or do I just need something that functions that you can read? And ultimately, that was the decision. But we spooled up very quickly in that. Started getting people scheduled. And then honestly, I didn't know what I was going to write. I went into that very first meeting on that Monday, July 23rd, a Monday morning at 9 a.m. I met a woman in North Charleston, and I went into that meeting and went, I have no idea what I'm going to write about. I took a notebook with me and I went, boy, this is the wrong time to figure this out. Well, I'm here now. So I sat down and I talked with her. And I think what came out after that meeting and slowly evolved, it didn't start out perfectly. I wrote down a bunch of stuff, and then I wrote a synopsis of our meeting and some observations I had of her, just from my perspective. And over time, I wrote more about these people because I was meeting people that were really opening up, and I was finding really impressive stuff. And it was that first Saturday, sat down with a young woman, and all kinds of personal stuff opened up. We met for 4 hours. She was late for meeting. She was supposed to meet her boyfriend at a farmer's market. We have this very rushed picture coming out of this place because she goes, oh God, I'm late. And she's running off. And I'm going, oh my God, we sat here for 4 hours. And in that 4 hours, she opened up about tons of stuff. Now, most of that personal stuff never made the writing because it's just not my stuff to talk about. But I was amazed with that. And so I found myself sitting down and writing about the person that I was sitting across from. I wasn't writing so much about, we talked about this, we talked about that. I was sitting there saying, okay, this is a person I sat across from. And I'd originally gone to school to be a writer. And I'd run out of money, and that's why I joined the military. So I was now writing about this person I sat across from. I was saying, this is the person. And I had to get a little more creative with it because the picture was really bad. The selfie that we took a selfie, and the selfie was really bad. We had a big glaring light behind us. It was a blur. You could barely tell there were two human beings. And I was trying to edit it. That was never going to happen. I was trying to learn computer editing in 3 minutes. It wasn't. But I wrote just, this is the meeting that we had. And one of the things she had talked about that was kind of wonderfully illustrated in that bad picture was how scary it was for her. She had just left a job to pursue a career as a photographer. And here in Charleston, that is an incredibly competitive field. She wanted to be a photographer in Charleston. So I'm looking at this bad picture going, I get it. I have to put this bad picture out on the internet now. And I'm nervous about it because someone's going to look at this and judge me. So I just started digging into more subtext. And now it's become these moments where I'm meeting with someone and talking about the person across from me. Whether it's her, I've interviewed people as old as 86 years old. And the youngest person I ever sat down with was 15. And he was a 15-year-old boy who had the most generous heart I've literally ever encountered in 38 years of being alive. He is the most generous person ever. He was learning how to monetize a stream of him playing a video game, not so that he could buy anything for himself, but because his mother is a widow and he wants to contribute to the house and he's too young to drive and she works all day. So this was the way he could make money. And I went, well, I mean, he has studied this thing to the degree that I've seen entrepreneurs that studied their business models less. Mm-hmm. And I just went, wow. And he is really just wants to give to people. He dabbles in writing, but he wants to be a chef. And I go, well, so you'll write on the side? He goes, no, I'll probably just give my writing ideas to other friends of mine who write. I'm like, I've never encountered this generosity. Like, I'm not doing anything with it. You can have it. At 15. So that's really what started happening. So it just became this process of meeting with somebody and then really taking the time, taking a couple hours to let my mind digest what just happened. And then I give myself literally, I have the strictest writing requirements. I think I give myself 1 hour and 1,000 words. I don't let myself exceed 1,000 words of writing, and I don't let myself take longer than an hour to write it. And that's like clockwork every day, regardless of when I meet them.
Oh, good stuff. So is there perhaps a different profession that you'd be interested in going into at some point?
I think I'm going, and I never thought I'd say this, but I think I may be going towards coaching. I never thought I would have been in the coaching field. I was like, no, not coaching. I actually, probably my confession is I used to make fun of coaches. I used to say, I had coaches in business, and coaches who were in business with me usually had done the job I had done, and those coaches were okay. But then there were these other coaches that I didn't understand. But now I kind of find myself moving towards that as part of my career. I mean, part of it as a writer, and then part of it involved in coaching in this kind of very specific area of oddly enough, a guy with 2 divorces giving people advice on how to build relationships. But I guess it's because I've been down the road and I can tell you how bad ones look. So maybe that's helpful. But yeah, I find myself pulling more and more into that area.
Okay. So if you're to look at yourself and pick out a character strength, what would you say is the greatest one?
I am relentless. We had Hurricane Florence coming down here, and people were going, well, you're going to have to take a day off, but it's no big deal. You'll take a day off, and you'll just miss a connection, and we'll all forgive you. No one could go 100 days in a row. So I packed up my car, and I drove 3 hours up road into the upstate to Spartanburg, South Carolina, and I did a road trip up there so I didn't have to miss a day. I went, no, I'm not. I said in 100 days. I'm not doing this in 101. We're doing this in 100 days. I'll just go away from the hurricane. So I drove up to Spartanburg, South Carolina, and did 4 days up there interviewing people, and then drove back. Literally, I got back into Charleston at 6 a.m. this morning. I woke up at 3 in the morning and drove back here so I could make my connection on Monday on this morning. So I am truly relentless when I'm passionate about something. When I find what I want to do, I do not fall down easily. And if you're going to stop me, you're going to have to stop me. So my joke with Florence has been like, no, it was not enough of a hurricane to stop me from doing this. And if it had been worse, I would have driven to Tennessee and done it there. I think that's been a huge strength for me is not giving up. Because we're on day 57 now. We're 57 out of 100 days. And I've not missed a day. I've had people cancel on me, and I just wander out to laundromats or coffee shops and meet somebody because I won't let this fail.
Yep. So on the flip side of that, obviously the opposite of the strength would be, what is your greatest weakness?
Oh, my greatest weakness. So I've talked about this a little bit as I've done this. I deal with clinical depression, and as a result of that clinical depression, I can be a horrific critic to myself, which can really lead me to be paralyzed. So it's kind of weird because sometimes it tugs against that relentlessness. It's easy to start feeling hopeless. That clinical depression has been a huge weakness that I've just had to learn to live with. I was fortunate enough. I have a very good friend who lost both his legs in operations in Afghanistan. And I remember talking to him about it, and I went, man, this depression is horrible. And he goes, yep, but you got to live with it. Look, and he told me, he goes, I'll never have legs. He goes, I'll never have legs, and you'll always deal with this. He goes, so you just have to learn to get up every day and fight through it. Same way I have to get up and I get out of bed and I get in my wheelchair and I go, because the reality is I lost my legs. Because the reality is you wake up and you wrestle with this clinical depression. So you have to learn to work around it. So it can be very negative. I'm fortunately enough, I have a very strong routine that I use to fight it, but it is easily my greatest weakness, because if it gets a hold of me, then everything falls apart. It's kind of the monster in the closet, if you will. Every day is okay. I got to get up and I got to work out and I've got to make sure I'm eating right and taking care of myself, because I have to go do these connections. And if this gets a hold of me, then this whole project falls apart very quickly.
Sure. Goodness. So where would you get your best ideas? People go to places to brainstorm. So is there a particular place that you get your best ideas from?
I love the gym. Me and the gym are my best ideas. I start every day at 4 a.m. In the gym, lifting weights and everything else. It's my quiet time, and that's why I go so early, is because nobody else is in there, and the 2 or 3 people that are only there to work out and have nothing to do with me. So, I sit down, and I usually, oddly enough, I don't listen to music. I listen to an audiobook, and I lift weights or I run. And I clear my head, and then immediately after the gym, I go into the gym with a notebook. And at times throughout the gym, I'm writing stuff down in this notebook. And I think people think it's my workout numbers. It's not. It's ideas. That's where I'm really generating my best ideas. First thing in the morning, in the gym, just doing something physical and letting the world kind of get a start.
Cool. So if you're describing what you do with your particular project and your business from a very high level, assuming maybe somebody wants to do something similar to this, how would you describe that?
So I always tell people I'm a storyteller. That's really what I am. I'm a storyteller. And what I do is I tell the story of 100 connections. That's the big picture of what I do. However, that story has to be told. If that's doing a speaking engagement, if that's talking on a podcast, if that's writing the actual engagements, that's the job, is telling the story. And I very much embraced that. So my title for my organization, well, I have team members with different titles. The title for me in my organization, we went, well, are you the CEO? Are you this? Are you the founder? We went, nope, he's the chief storyteller. Matt is the chief storyteller. He is the guy who carries the torch and tells the story. Ultimately that's how I describe it to everybody at just the highest level possible. Is I'm telling the story of 100 connections, and telling the story of building relationships, because that's really, I'm a big believer that's how we learn. Our best way of learning is through storytelling. So I'm bringing that back into a little bit more of a form, and I'm certainly not the only person to do it, but I'm just tackling this particular issue in that way.
Yeah, and it's it's something that's through tradition. Many different societies and cultures have had storytelling as part of their tradition. And
yeah,
so it's carrying that forward. So something that's worked for a long time.
Yeah, it's really present in our society at every level. I mean, you think about people who go to church and all, and we go to church and we're storytelling in church, and we're storytelling, in school, and well, when we sit around the table and you're there with your kids and everything, you're talking about your day, you're all telling stories. It's our most fundamental way of really communicating things to each other. And it helps because we even embellish a little bit. I talk about my godfather a lot, but I always loved hearing his stories, because I'm not entirely sure how much of them are true anymore. Sometimes the details, I remember him telling me a story of seeing a deer out the back window of his house. He had a hip replacement, so he can't go out. I'm from Missouri originally, and he can't go out in the winter with those hip pins. So he saw a deer from his bathroom window and went, well, no one lives with me. So he grabbed a deer rifle and shot a deer from the bathroom window. And I'm going, really? I mean, I'm not doubting you. You're probably the guy who would do it, but still, are you serious? And that's a vivid image of him. So when people ask me about my godfather, they say, can you describe him? I'm like, he's a guy who shot a deer from his bathroom window. That sums the man up pretty well.
Sounds pretty fun to me.
I agree. If I had a bathroom window where I had deer going nearby, he goes, look, I figured it out. I'm warm. I'm comfortable. I've got my coffee. I've got my rifle.
That's right.
I should have figured this out 30 years ago. It's great.
So let's kind of wind down our time here this afternoon. I'll ask you sort of a trivia question that I ask people. Tell me something about you that most people don't know.
Something about me that most people don't know. Okay. Only a few people know this one. When I was in the military, I had a favorite place. I traveled over the world. I saw a whole lot of it, 6 of 7 continents. I made it around a lot. But I have a favorite spot in a town in Germany called Mainz. Right on the Main River is a statue. Oddly enough, it's a statue for Hans Christian Andersen by a playground, and there's a coffee shop there. And I used to take my days off in Germany at that coffee shop to start. It was a place, it was so tucked back, and most of the people there only spoke German. So I would go back there and take my time off there. So I always tell the thing that I think a lot of people don't know is if I ever decide to retire and just disappear, I'll be at that coffee shop.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds good. So, Matt, how would people get a hold of you? Obviously people would want to reach out and plug in with you and want to be able to be part of what you have going on. So, how do they reach out? Yeah.
So, obviously, LinkedIn is a huge factor for me. Just Matt Hampton. My byline says I'm telling the story of 100 connections, and I have a humongous beard, so I'm pretty easy to see. But then also via the website. So it's number 100 connectionscharleston.com. So that's all one word, number 100 connectionscharleston.com. And there's a contact form through the website that goes directly to my personal email. And I've gotten very good. I don't know that I expected anybody to email me, but a whole lot of people started being impacted and reaching out based on the project. So I've gotten very good at responding to all of that stuff. But those would be the 2 best ways to find me, to get a hold of me.
Excellent. So, Matt, I've enjoyed our time that we've had here together, and being able to dig in and discover a little bit more about you and the things that make you tick, and also how you're building your legacy and going to create something that other people will be able to talk about for many generations. And so it's been a pleasure having you out here on the program. And
yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Like I enjoy telling each person I have on, I'll see you around the bend, my friend.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to LegacyCast. Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to come back next time as we speak with more top influencers, industry experts, and business owners from around the world.